I had to take the video down because my friend got threatened. You're supposed to shut down certain behaviors. In every single thing, we've become divided. It's turned into a freak show.
I'm a dog trainer from Texas, and I work with Last Chance dogs. But their last chance with me is the only thing standing between them and euthanasia or rehoming. My mission? To give dog owners the skills to bring out the best in their dogs so that they can work with them and not against them. Join the movement as we change the world of dogs forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Cabral, multi-time author. He's written some incredible books. I have them in my collection. I go back to them often. A philanthropist, a director, a practitioner of martial arts for over 20 years, a powerful speaker. I mean, there's about 10 things you haven't done. That's about it. So I think what I'm most impressed by is what you do. You seem to do very well. You don't seem to half in, half out of anything.
Thank you. Well, I just try only to do things I'm good at.
So I wanted really quickly to ask, because this is something I haven't asked you before. What's the transition from martial arts to dog training? Because it feels like a big jump.
Yeah, I just got burnt. I get burnt out on things because of like just emotional disappointments in people and stuff. So the martial arts started turning into, participation trophy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I ran a very traditional martial arts school in West Los Angeles, where the very, very best martial artists in the world had schools. Hickson Gracie was down the street. Brian Hawkins was down the street. Heo Cho, Bong Soo-han, Ed Parker School. I mean, they were the greatest martial artists in the world that were, we were, I don't want to say fellow trainers, but we were fellow martial artists doing our stuff. And I didn't believe it was heading in a direction that I liked. Did not like all the stuff that had to do with, giving rewards to people that didn't really deserve them, namely kids and people were, just following along. So I just decided to close it. I took some time off and tried to figure out what I could do. And I remember I'd helped a friend of mine train his Doberman. And I thought it might be kind of fun. And I rescued a Shar-Pei not too long thereafter. And man, we just, we really hit it off, the dog and I. And then people started, telling me what a great dog he was. And I started Bound Angels to rescue dogs.
Yeah.
And then, in my life with the Shar-Pei was actually kind of interesting because we kind of went everywhere. He was, a dog that was kind of aggressive when I got him, but then he just, through training and structure, became a great dog. It's kind of an ambassador for the breed. And then I rescued another one, which was not an ambassador for the breed. He was a really gnarly, aggressive dog.
Yeah.
And he was very, very challenging, but he rose to the occasion of training. And my vet started sending me clients. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to. I was just kind of like, I don't know what I want to do. But that kind of just organically happened, and that's where it went.
Yeah, the rest is history. Let me ask, because you do a lot of, it seems that oftentimes passion is really what's driven you. And I think the dog community is fortunate that passion drove you into dogs, because right now you stand as a leader in a little bit of a disoriented time when dog trainers are kind of chasing their tail. In shelters, and I want to talk a little bit more about that later, but in shelters, is there a particular breed that you see time and again that just overruns these things?
Pit bulls.
Is it serious? So it's the same there?
It's the same everywhere, I mean, in the, in different periods of time, I don't know, 80s, 90s, 2000s, it was German Shepherds, it was Rottweilers, it was Dobermans, it's now heading towards Malinois, but they're still not as popular. But they are becoming very popular, and and media is doing a great job at promoting them so that they'll be destroyed. Backyard breeders are breeding them so they'll be destroyed, and they have the same kind of. It's a very similar breed to a pit bull in that they have very large litters. They're very high drive. They have a really interesting personality that people are drawn to. Very different than but I know people who have pit bulls and Malinois, but it's that whole. Macho driven machismo, egotistical thing. You got to have a tough dog to be a tough guy. And it's something I never got that. I mean, maybe because I spent my life in the martial arts being tough and learning to be tough and getting my ass kicked a lot. That made a big difference. So I didn't see it like that, but I see it now. Even, I mean, I had a big to do. I don't know if you saw it. I had to take the video down because my friend got threatened. Where I went against some of these people doing the bite sports, and it was with a band dog. It was with a pit bull type dog. But they're doing it with the Malinois. They do all these crazy, over the top things with the dogs, like they did with the pit bull. And they're doing it with the Malinois now.
I
The
didn't see this. The video you had to take down?
Yeah, I kind of went against a group of people, and I got threatened, and which I have no problem with that at all.
Sure.
But a friend of mine got threatened, which I didn't like. I don't like when my friends get threatened, so I said, okay,
Yeah.
fine, I'll just take the video down.
Yeah.
I wasn't backing down my position because I
Sure.
still hold my position. I don't like certain kinds of training, and I'm very open about it. I don't have any qualms about voicing my opinion. And when people say,
Yeah.
well, you don't know enough about the training, they certainly might be right, but I certainly know more about dogs than them. And in fact, I forgot more about dogs than they'll ever know. So it's just a
Yeah.
stupid comment to make to me. But, you know, whether it's people are being too hard with dogs or people are being too forgiving and too easy with dogs, those are
Yeah.
both big issues that we have with dominantly bred dogs. Those
Yeah.
dogs are at risk of one, doing a lot of damage to another dog or person, and two, being killed for that behavior. So
Yeah.
you have to kind of, it's kind of like surgery, like you're going to do surgery, you're going to do it with a scalpel and stuff, but you're not going to do it with a chainsaw. But a
Sure.
lot of people have a chainsaw type approach to dog training that it's either, and that chainsaw can be treats, and that chainsaw can be, e-collars and
Dominant dog collars or anything
heavy-handedness.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
anything. It doesn't matter. I don't care which tool you use. You should know how to use it.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something I wanted to talk about a bit in your book, Desperate Dogs Determined Measures.
You're watching the Black Wolf Brigade podcast, new episode every first Friday of the month where I get experts to come in and answer your burning questions that you leave in the comments. And if you don't subscribe, I will not let her bite this. Go ahead, go on. Go on, subscribe. Go on. Yes, fuck! Oh, one of you must have done it. Oh, look how happy you made her. Oh, look at you. You made this dog so happy. Next, I'm going to ask Robert Cabral a question about punishment that he can't remember ever being asked before. And consequently, he's stunned for just a moment. You won't want to miss it. Coming right back to the podcast.
And this is something I wanted to talk about a bit in your book, Desperate Dogs Determined Measures. Great book. You talk about a continuum of force. And I think one of the problems we face today is one side of the aisle will not admit to using any kind of force. Of course, we know that that's a bit laughable. If you force a dog to be next to you by having them on a leash, then you have used a certain level. But the other side, I think sometimes we need guardrails on what's an appropriate level of force because, and I think you'd probably agree, just because it works doesn't mean it should be done. Just because it brought about the end result you're hoping it would bring about doesn't mean that it should be used, and certainly not in every case. And so you talk a bit about a continuum of force in Desperate Dogs Determined Measures. I want you, if you don't mind, to talk about kind of the appropriate uses of force in dog training. I know we've got limited time here, but what are the guardrails, things that are absolutely off limits? It doesn't matter the case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really great question. I've never been asked that before. But I mean, I just think you have to come from a humanitarian standpoint. I always say,
Mm.
my guideline is I love dogs.
Yeah,
That pretty much guides me by an outline. If I love dogs, I'm not going to do anything that's going to be cruel. Like, for example, you know, I have no problem with correcting a dog. I've corrected many.
sure,
I correct my puppy.
sure.
And it might be kind of harsh, but it's certainly not personal per se. I mean, correction should be personal in certain realms, but when they over and exceed the need, I don't know the right word, but the offense, then you're doing too much. Like you're supposed to shut down certain behaviors like aggression
Sure.
and dominance and stuff like that. But you don't ever extinguish behaviors. You kind of just manage them. And I think that's where people make the mistake. They think, well, if I correct the dog really hard, that's going to happen. Now, what comes into play a lot, and I'm sure you've seen the video, like the one that was on Larry Crone's page,
Yeah.
you know, people just lose their marbles. They just, like a lot of guys. I mean, and again, I'm a very alpha male. I understand temper and I understand, I've got a certain amount of rage in me myself, but you certainly don't want to use that on a 50-pound dog. I mean, I can understand doing, that on a 200-pound guy who's trying to hurt my 50-pound dog, but I
Sure.
certainly wouldn't do it on a 50-pound dog. So we have to look at how much force is necessary to accomplish. Here's a great example, by the way. Let's say you're, and very few men nowadays are going to understand this, but let's say you have a wrench and a bolt, and you're trying to get the bolt off. You want to use enough force to bring that bolt off of the car,
Sure.
but you don't want to snap the bolt's head off,
And you
right?
also don't want to bust your knuckle against another parts of the car.
And that's what's happening. So,
Yeah.
when these people get caught, then they're busting the knuckle against the other part of the car. So we have to look at what the infraction is. Okay, is the dog not retrieving the bird properly, or
Sure.
is the dog trying to kill another dog? Because those would be very different pictures in which the dog should see a correction.
Sure.
But and what you said is really interesting. Two sides of the aisle. In every single thing in the last, man, like 10 years, we've become divided. We're black, we're
Yeah.
white, we're gay, we're straight, we're Republican,
Right.
we're Democrat, we're force free, we're dog trainers. Every single, but we're men, we're women. Well, sometimes we're not women, sometimes we're not men. It's like
Sure.
we're dividing, like, not only men and women. Now we're dividing men and women and women, because
Yeah.
that makes for really good social media. That makes for really good 24-hour news cycles. And people are just buying into it. You know what I mean? And people are just, the
Yeah.
more, crazy of a video I post, the more followers I get. Well, I've seen a complete standstill in social media followers, because when I started this game, whatever it was, 10 years ago, with social media, or maybe less, um, it was kind of about good content. It was like,
Right.
hey, I want to really put this content out there for free, because I was making a very, very good living in Los Angeles training dogs. And I said, well, there's people around the world who can't afford this. And when I had my karate school, I always had a couple of kids there on tuition assistance, and I said they can come for free. They're going to just clean the school and work here, and it was fantastic. One of those kids I talk to still regular now, and he's 30 something years old, and he's
Wow.
like a top CPA. Like, he makes a huge, huge living. Like, he's a top of his game,
Good for
because
him.
he
That's
had, and
awesome.
he says, you gave me this opportunity to learn how to be confident.
Yep.
Well, I wanted to do that with dogs. So I did social media. So I did YouTube videos. I did this, not to get popular, not to become like some kooky dog trainer who dresses funny and talks funny, and you know what I mean?
I know
But
who you're talking
but
about.
yeah, and there's several of them, but the idea was, I just wanted to put dog training out there. Just here, this is something I discovered, something I'm good at. If I was still doing
Yeah.
martial arts, I probably would have done it with martial arts. But
Yeah.
it's turned into a freak show. It's really all social media, and look at the Malinois videos. You've got these people doing these things with Malinois, which are hideous. People send it to me like I'm going to be impressed, like the dog jumping and grabbing a tug toy, 15 feet in the air, and then somebody catching it, and then some other idiot trying it and not catching it, and the dog breaks his back.
Yeah.
It's just, it's ridiculous. I hate it.
Yeah. And this brings me to another question. As you've got somewhere in the ballpark of 300,000 followers across platforms, not including YouTube, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, because YouTube, it's a lot more. And but your other social medias, which are, the more vertical platforms, the more
Mhm.
flamboyant, the more viral tending. Um, so you're a bit of a leader in this space. I wonder, and I think you'll agree on this. Lately, I have become so just sick of the marketing that we find in the dog training industry, and
Mhm.
purposely making things just complicated enough to where people need to come find your proprietary system. I mean, dog
Mhm.
training is hundreds of years old, man,
Mhm.
at the minimum. And so I'm at this place where it's like I feel like dog trainers just need to shut up and post footage of dog training so that people can
Yeah.
see what dog training looks like. What do you think dog trainers should be doing in 2024 from a content perspective in a world that thrives off of chaos? What do you think
Mhm.
is the most responsible for this industry?
Well, it depends if you want to be popular, or you want to do the
That's
right
what I
thing.
mean. What's the most responsible for this industry? What will leave an industry in 15 years?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I don't know the great need for every person who trains a dog to have a social media platform where they're
Mm,
trying to get 100,000 people. I don't see the need for it, really. I did it because there wasn't anybody doing it. I
sure.
intentionally, I did a TikTok account and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And I kind of let it go. Like I don't post to X, I don't post to Rumble and stuff because it's just too many. You're spread all across all these platforms. Like the desire for adulation in today's society is what's really defining you. So people are
Mm,
hooked by how many likes they have, how many followers they have, and
mm,
they then follow the algorithm to get more people. They're not even making content for their followers anymore.
yeah.
I make content for my followers. I'm only focused on the people who follow me. If I wanted to build it to, another, if I want to take it to 1 million, for example, yeah, I could make stupid videos and get to 1 million followers. I have no doubt about that. But ethically, I don't find the need for it. So when these
Yeah.
people are, when their main goal, think about it for a second too. What's your goal? Like, why do you want the 100,000 followers? I can tell you right now, between Facebook and Instagram, I make nothing. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe make a couple $100 a month, and maybe on YouTube I make a little bit more. But unless I lived in Rwanda, I don't think I could pay my rent on that
Sure.
income. Um, I think people are doing it because they're so hooked in. In other words, they're foregoing the art of dog training,
Mm,
um, searching now for adulation as a social media dog trainer, which is
yeah.
wrong. Like everything I did was based on just showing what I do. I mean, and my videos are not very flashy. Like I don't really do a good job with editing them or anything like that. Um, if I honestly, if I would have come around now, if I started in social media today,
Well, you drown.
I would have no followers. Yeah, I'd have
That's right.
none.
You
I'm not
drown.
that flashy. I'm not that good looking. I'm not that young. I'm not that hip. I'm not that guy. So I got lucky that I came in at a point in time where there was a desire. People were searching out, and so people still follow me. They still,
Yeah.
kind of pay respect to the fact that I've been there that long. But I don't know the purpose, honestly. I wish I could tell you what the purpose is for having a lot of followers on social media, but I think they're going to everything, right? They want to be a dog trainer. They want to do seminars. They want to do
Mm,
podcasts. They want to do products. They want to do this. And it's like every new thing that comes up, that's what they want to do. They want to police dogs. They
mm,
want to do competition dogs. They want to do pet dogs. They want to do aggressive dogs. They want to work the shelter. They want to do this.
mm.
Like that's just misguided. It's just people who have no
Sure.
direction.
Sure.
And if you have no direction, you're probably going to go in no direction. You're going to be like a ship without a rudder.
Man, that's very well put. I want to pivot now and ask you, it's a fun little thought experiment. How
Mhm.
quickly, if we collaborate, how
Mhm.
quickly could we ruin a fictitious dog? And I've got some notes here of what I would do if I wanted to absolutely destroy a fictitious dog. And I wondered if you had things that you might want to add. I would take it to the dog park at a young age so it could get killed in a fight or some
Mhm.
preventable disease.
Mhm.
I would let it free roam my house, totally unattended as a puppy, so it can get a bowel impaction. I would free feed it so it doesn't have any sense of loyalty and food scarcity coming from me. It only comes from this one person who manages resources. I would let it out in the neighborhood during the day because it's bored and it needs a little bit of exercise or whatever. I would pet it to calm it down when it's frustrated and growling, and I would let my big yard, my big yard, do all of its exercise. What do you think? What can we add here to destroy this fictitious dog in 30 days or less?
Man, I don't know. That's a pretty good list to start with. I mean, you know, I mean, I see people do it all the time. I mean, I see, bringing it to a board and trained trainer without any training from yourself. I mean, that's a huge piece. I think people
Sure.
make that mistake or getting it back from a trainer and not following through on any of the training. And there are some good trainers out there that do a good job boarding and training. I just don't understand why people board and train their dogs. I did
Mm,
one board and train. That was my dog Maya, and I kept her at the end because I knew the people couldn't handle her, and that was the last dog I ever board and trained.
wow.
So yeah, I mean, I would kind of. I mean, again, I'm not the most popular guy with dog trainers when I say that because
Sure, sure. That's the big
I
ticket.
yeah, it's a huge ticket and it's a great way to make money. If I was
Sure.
coaching dog trainers, I'd say, just do board and train and, you're getting between 2 and 5,000 a month, depending on where in the country you are.
Yeah.
And it just really, I mean, honestly, a lot of those dogs, and I'm not saying the good ones, but a lot of those trainers, the dog gets out 2 or 3 times for 20 minutes besides potty breaks. And that's how people make their money. I mean,
Hmm.
man, it doesn't even matter if a dog's trained. What really matters is a dog is socialized and a dog has an ability to live a life in society.
Yeah.
Everybody's focused on a perfectly trained dog. Like you look on all these social media platforms and you see all these dogs doing these amazing, amazing, amazing things. But some of those dogs can't function like taking them for a walk down the street. They can do everything else, but they can't function. That's one place where we lose sight of things. I mean,
Yeah.
look at, for example, a great bodybuilder who can't touch his toes. I mean,
Sure.
what's practical? I mean, your dog should really have a nice life. And like with my dog Shmuley, I got him from Germany and he comes out of champion lines. And I said in the beginning, everybody said, "Oh, you could take this dog to the nationals and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "It's not my goal."
Mm.
I mean, I'm working with Oscar Mora, who's I think one of the top trainers in the country. And he said, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." And I said, I'm not, you know, I really love my dog. I just love laying on the couch with him and hanging out with him. And I do the training because it's who he is. It's who the dog is. I'm not putting a square peg in a round hole, but I'm not the guy, generally speaking. I did martial arts for, I mean, 40 years and I never competed in a competition. It's just not my thing. I don't like
Really?
it.
No
I never liked it.
fooling.
No, it's not. I mean, again, kudos to people who do it. Like, I mean, my friend, Peter Sherrick or Oscar or Frank Phillips or all these amazing guys who do competitions and who dominate in them. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. It's not who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not who I am. So, um, you just have to think about if you really, why are you getting a dog? And do you really love dogs? And if you don't really love dogs, why are you getting a dog? And if it's just to get to a trial and to, get a title or to get a championship or something like that, I think it ends up being kind of selfish because some dogs wash out. What happens to the dogs who wash out?
Fair.
Some people want a really tough dog. That's the big thing now. It's like with the Belgian Malinois, the same thing with the pit bull. Um, they want this tough dog that's going to intimidate people, and I never really understood that. Like I don't get intimidated by dogs. Like dogs don't scare me. I kind of know how they operate, and I think, with the exception if you have like 150-pound Corso or something like that, most dogs, I mean, they're going to bite in on me, but they're not going to hurt me. I mean, maybe as I get older, I start to see, I'm slowing down a little bit, but in my prime of my life, I mean, I never worried about getting a dog bite. It's just a bite. It's not a big deal. Unless the dog gets you in the throat, you're going to pretty much be able to defend yourself and possibly kill that dog.
Yeah.
But now we're looking at the ego driven part of it, where I guess, when I was younger, it was muscle cars and now it's muscle dogs.
So I want to pivot here, and I need to be respectful of your time. I know we're right at. Do you have time for just a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I want to pivot here and ask you about some training myths. You are many years my senior in this discipline, and I want to run some things by you. I know how I feel about them, but I want to draw on your experience for the pet dog owners that will be listening. Just rapid fire. Are dogs pack animals?
Yeah.
Do e-collars create aggression?
Improperly used, they can.
Sure. Do harnesses make dogs pull?
Yes.
Does bed sharing
If the
promote?
dog if the dog has that drive. The funny thing, Chris, I could answer every one of these questions one way, and you could go ask them to me again, and I could flip the other way and defend on both sides,
Sure,
right?
sure, sure, sure.
Because
Situational.
yes, dogs are naturally pack animals, and we're naturally social animals. But there are certain people who are not social, and there's certain animals
Fair.
that don't that would prefer the company of me over the pack. So we can flip those things around.
Absolutely.
And depending on where you're coming from with these things, I would defend them both sides, right? So, I mean, I'll give you like the knee-jerk reaction that you're asking for, but in reality, I can give you both sides of the argument on both of those.
Yeah, I think it was Jamie at Black Kraken Kennels. He posted
Uh-huh.
this picture of it was like a Simpsons picture where there's like a
Mhm.
pitchfork fire torch mob. And the caption says, "There's one rare exception to that thing you just said."
Yeah, right,
And,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know, the
yeah,
thing
for
about dog
sure.
training knowledge is for everything you say, there's an anecdote where it's like, yes, of course, in that scenario, it's different. That dog has an
Yeah,
unusually low pack drive. Sure,
sure.
that animal's not. So, does bed sharing promote owner disrespect? Having confused leadership.
I think it depends where the dog comes from. I
Mhm.
think it depends on the innate nature of the dog. It certainly can. Like, I certainly don't do it with my dogs early on, although if I did it, it wouldn't change anything. I can break
Sure.
all the rules, right? I can do whatever with a dog and fix it later, or not create it in the first place where somebody else might not be able to. But yeah, I mean, bed sharing is one of those things that I would by the way, in the end, like our boss man, our dachshund died at 18 years old. He slept on my chest every night for the last 6 months or year of his life because I insisted on it. I didn't care. And like
Mhm.
when my dog Goofy was sick a couple of months back, I slept on the floor with him. So it's not something to do early on unless you really know that dog, because it can cause, more so than the owner disrespect, it can cause separation anxiety when the dog eventually does have to sleep away from you. They should
Yeah,
understand how to be away from you, but they should also be able to sleep in bed with you. I don't have any problem with that.
love it. Does playing tug cause aggression?
The right answer is no, but if you have a dominant dog and you are not of the personality to be able to keep that dog in check,
Sure.
it can.
Will spay and neuter neutralize aggression?
No.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Is it impossible for unaltered males and unaltered females to live together peacefully?
When they're not on their heat cycle, it is. I mean, when they're on their cycle, it's very, very hard for the dogs to do that. I mean, I had, intact males and females living together, and it was just a pain in the ass. It's just a lot of energy. But
Sure.
in theory, of course, we all do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not neutered, I mean, so
Yeah, me
I don't have a
either.
problem living with my wife. So, you know, but dogs they have a different drive. So yeah, people do it all the time. Do I suggest it for the average pet owner? No, I'm not a big proponent of spay and neuter. I think it's kind of abusive on the dogs, but
Yeah,
in some ways, we just have to address the irresponsibility of people and what it causes, when you have all these dogs in the shelters. It sucks.
yeah. I think about there's a verse of scripture where Jesus is telling the Jews. He said, "God gave you divorce because your hearts were hard." He didn't give you
Hmm.
divorce because it was right. He gave you divorce because you guys have
Hmm.
hard hearts, and he's like
Hmm.
making a way for you to deal with your own hard hearts. I feel
Yeah.
similarly about spay and neuter. It's like I don't think you should, but there's a countless multitude of dog owners who are going to be unbelievably irresponsible, and for them, that could keep them out of some trouble.
Well, just remember though, so this is the thing, like if you make spay neuter a policy, it never really gets reinforced, right? Or
Mm.
enforced. What happens is the good people who live in the nice neighborhoods, who are trying to do the right thing, who are law-abiding citizens, say, "Oh, I got to spay and neuter my dog at 8 weeks old," and they completely
Oh,
destroy the dog, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yet the people who want to breed their dogs and make $100 per puppy are going to do it anyway. They don't care. And
fair.
you're not, and nobody's going around checking spay and neuter, right? It's like if the
Yeah,
dog gets out and it gets caught and whatever, and then they're going to spay and neuter the dog before they give it back to the people. I just think it's a really nonsensical law that punishes innocent dogs and people.
agreed. Are dogs, one last one on this, and I'll move to the
Mhm.
last thing.
Mhm.
Are dogs capable of ruminating on things?
Ruminating as far as eating, you mean?
No. On like dwelling on something and like it brooding in their heart and mind when they're not currently in that scenario. They had a fight with a
Oh,
dog, they go into
uh,
a kennel, and then they just think about how much they hate that dog for hours and hours.
well, when you come to it from, you have to come from a different perspective on this, because I've dealt with this a lot, and it's one of the things I talk about in dealing with aggression. So
Mm,
if you have a dog who's aggressive, or let's say the dog's not aggressive, let me back up. You have a dog that is around another dog, and now these two dogs fight, and you separate them and put them in, like, timeout zones. Like, okay, you go in that crate, you go in the other room. Um, I do believe that the dog gestates that in their mind, thinks about it, dwells on it, and when the next time they see that dog, they will pick up where they left off. I've seen that happen countless times. In fact,
mm,
when I used to deal with aggression cases, um, that was always the issue I would have to extinguish, coming and taking over from another trainer, because they would always do that. They said, if they had a fight, we separated them. Can you help us? And I'm like, well, why did you separate them? Well, because they had a fight.
mm.
I said, but did you solve the confusion in the
Right.
dog's mind about the fight? And they said, yeah, we separated them. I said, well, that didn't solve anything,
That's right.
right? That just shows them the last thing we did is where we pick up. It's the exact same thing as like with training a dog. Like if I'm frustrated in my training with my puppy, I will stop and do something that's super fun with the dog, game, tug,
Yep.
ball, a bunch of jackpot rewards, and then put them up. I will never put a dog up in frustration, because whatever
Good
you
idea.
put the dog up in, whatever mood you end the session on, whether it's a fight, an obedience training, protection training, whatever it is, wherever you end that, that's the last thought in the dog's mind. And just
Mm,
like you and me, if the last thought in our mind was, I said something that you found offensive, and then we disconnected our call, you're going to go, God, that Robert Cabral's a real asshole, right? But if I say
sure.
something and then we kind of, talk about it afterwards, we make up and whatever, and we have a joke or whatever, then that's the last thing you think about. Now, you may still remember that, but it's not the primal thought in your mind.
Sure.
And the dog, I believe, if it's a strong impact, I think the dog will ruminate on it. You know, I
Sure.
think you need to resolve things, resolve conflict in a dog's mind before you end any session or before you end any experience with the dog.
Yeah. So I really, really quickly want to play yes, no,
Mhm.
maybe, never. I'm going to run some things
Okay.
by you and tell me whether you support them, don't support them. It might under certain circumstances or absolutely never.
Okay.
All
So
right.
yes,
So
no, maybe, never, right?
yes, no, maybe, never.
Okay. Got it.
Um, okay. Prong collars. Yes, no, maybe, never.
Do I support them? Like, I don't, just give me
Would
a
you
little hint,
use
because
them? Do you think people should
oh, yeah,
use them? Are they evil?
maybe. I don't,
Maybe.
and maybe they're evil. Maybe I'd use them. Maybe I don't use them.
Got it.
I've taken prong
E-collar.
collars off of dogs, but good.
No, I've actually seen a video in the membership. By the way, I'm a member.
Oh, good. Okay.
And
Thanks.
I recommend yeah, no problem. I recommend people do it. It's one of the better values, I think, in the dog online dog training industry. There was a Mao that you were working with, and the dog was
Hmm.
just too amped on that prong collar. You might
Yeah.
remember it. Took the prong
Yep.
collar off, and the dog became super manageable almost immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So e-collars with 100 plus levels, e-collars with a lot of levels. Not saying using that at 100. Talking about
Hmm.
e-collars with 100 plus levels. Is that something you would utilize or you would recommend someone utilize?
Sure.
Now, the reason why I ask it that way is what about e-collars with less than 12? Where,
I, I'm I'm less partial on them, unless you have a collar like Martin makes a collar that you can actually program the settings into. The
mm,
problem with collars that have less settings, like if they go from 1 to 10, then the
right,
jump from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 is significantly larger
right,
than the jump from 31 to 32 to 33, right?
right.
So I don't know if there may be other collars who have this feature too, but I know Martin's collar, you can program it in an app and you can set what you need. And I think that's really critical, because some dogs, a 3 is just not enough, and a 4 is just way too hot when it only goes
Yeah,
to 10.
right.
Um, but yeah.
What about dominant dog collars?
I've used them once or twice. They can be good in the right hands, but I think for the most part, I don't think it's a successful tool. I don't think it's ever been really properly used by the general public.
Yeah, smart distinction. Lifting
Mhm.
front legs off the ground with a violent dog. I actually know where you stand on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the only ways to really disable a dog without really hurting the dog.
Yeah, and that's a smart. It's a really important thing to point out is that when you're compassionately working with an aggressive animal, you want to shut it down so that you can keep the life of the dog safe, not because you're
Hmm.
pissed at what they did to you or because you took
No.
their aggression personally. Correction and punishment should always be very judicial. It should
Hmm.
be you did this and now this is the thing that happens. I'm not even upset with you. You just need to know that when you do this, this will always happen. And if you're
Yep.
fine with that, cool, keep doing it. That's fine. You're
Yeah.
well within your right. Just know this will always happen.
Right.
So this is one of the ones that is a little touchy. Helicoptering.
The the problem with something like helicoptering is it's often abused, and it can cause damage in the dog because if the dog
Yeah.
loses their back feet, you have it's just like a long bite in IGP. It can do cervical damage to the dog, so you have to be very,
Right.
very, very careful. Now, the reason I don't like to take it off the table is because if you're in a life or death situation,
That's right.
it may be the only thing you have to do. And that's when it comes to life and death, and human life in most situations must be ranked above the dog's life.
Yeah.
Um, you should certainly have the option to do it.
So I've just got five more. I won't keep you much
Good.
longer. What about a bonker? It's a rolled up towel and you throw it across
Yeah.
the dog's face.
Um, I think it comes from the idea of the throat chain, Bill Keeler's throat chain.
Right.
And the
Correct.
throat
Yeah.
chain was a very, very good tool because the throat chain was used when the dog was running away from you, when they weren't using e-collars, right? So
Hmm.
um, the idea to the bonker is not a bad idea because it takes
Okay.
the onus, the correction idea off of you, and it just kind of like the hand of God does it. The way
Yeah.
I've seen people doing the bonkers online, I think it's kind of abusive to dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Let's talk about submissive rolling. So the dog has done something absolutely unhinged, and
Hmm.
a handler or the owner takes the dog by its scruff, puts the dog on its
Hmm.
side, kind of like mama would have with her puppies, and then holds it
Hmm.
there until it's calm, and then only moves away once the dog is calm. I have to put that in the definition because
Hmm.
those who are crazy about submissive rolling would say, "Yeah, but you did it wrong," you know.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, and
Yeah.
again, people come into this video and say, oh, Robert's sadistic and whatever, but I'm the guy who, I had to put a dog down not too long ago, a dog I never met. And, when the dog showed up at the vet and I had to put him down, I cried my eyes out for 2 hours with the dog and I cried for days after. And I'm going to make a video about it. I've given my life to dogs. I've given my
Yeah.
life to saving dogs that I've never met, to dogs I've never owned, to dogs I'll never gain one benefit from. I had a nonprofit and worked tirelessly for hundreds and hundreds of hours to save dogs all over the world.
Yeah.
So when I say that I stand for corrections, I stand for those corrections because I know 100% unequivocally, without a doubt, that those corrections should be used to save the dog's life.
Yeah. And it's right about now, it seems appropriate to bring up. There's a quote in your book, and it says, if we can retrain a dog to avoid aggression by using a softer approach, it should be our primary focus. You talked
Mhm.
about how if punishment, if corrections are not necessary in order to get the dog to kind of change directions here, well, then by all means, don't even go that direction. It's
Right.
worth mentioning because oftentimes we start talking about punishment and people think that when we're teaching sit, you pull out a bag of hammers and you just start chucking them at a
Mhm.
dog.
Right, right, right.
Okay, so what about a water pistol?
I don't like them.
It feels
I'm not a
gimmicky to
big
me.
fan. Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, when I was doing the shelter program, I was using clatter sticks and soft sticks for corrections on dogs. And then another program that was doing dog play groups would use these iced tea bottles, the Arizona iced tea bottles with pennies in
Mhm.
them and bop the dog in the face with them. It's just, I just think it's one of those things like, okay, do you really need that? There are certain situations where I certainly would use it, you know, but it's one of those
Sure.
things that as soon as I say it's not a bad idea, two things
That's
happen.
right.
One is everybody says, oh, Robert says I got to do that. That's the way I'm going to do it. That's the
Right.
solution. And it's not the solution, right?
Right.
There's 100 ways to go before you ever have to go to that level.
Yeah.
And I said, when people said, well, what about the e-collar? I said, I don't care. I ban it. Like I'm certainly not
Yeah.
fighting to keep e-collars or prong collars in existence for me. Like I can train a dog and I've proven it for 10, 12 years at the shelter. All I ever used was a slip
Yeah.
lead. And I did a good job at it. And I know I can do it. So when I say I want to see prong collars and e-collars around, I look at people who, like my
Don't
wife,
have
who has a
that
very
talent.
powerful dog. Well, or the physical presence or strength to
Fair.
do it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm really fighting a fight for other people. I don't care. Like, I could train any
It's
dog
for the
without
dogs.
anything. But it's certainly a lot easier on the dog if the dog is sitting 50 feet away and not sitting, that I can just push a button and he goes, oh, sorry, you want me to sit? I'll sit. As
Right.
opposed to walking all the way up and he's like, oh, shoot, what's going on? Why is he coming here? Um, because I'm not going to show up with a cookie, right? I'm going to show
Yeah.
up and try to make the dog sit. And whether, you know, all these positive only people want to look at it one way or the other, physical corrections, physically touching a dog and making them sit, pushing their butt down is an aversive, right? And we
Mhm.
certainly need to teach them that. And if I have the dog at the end of a harness or a halty or a gentle lead or whatever I have at the end of, and I'm trying to teach him not to pull to go into the street, it's still an aversive.
Sure.
And when you use words like dominating and instilling fear and all this stuff, it's just trigger words. It's just words that you're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
use to make me look bad to your nutty followers,
Yeah, do
you
your
know?
cult. Yeah. One last
Yeah.
one. It's lemon
Mhm.
juice.
I mean, I've used it. I mean, I don't believe in spraying it on the dog. I've used it like when my puppy, for example, would always chew at his leash, right? When I first got him. And
Hmm.
because the breeder that had him allowed him to do it. And she's not gonna on a 6-week old dog or 7-week old dog, 8-week old dog, you're not really gonna put a lot of corrections on the dog.
No, no
And
way.
when dogs start to chew on their leash, I mean, I've suggested, soaking the leash in lemon juice. But what I ended up doing, because he was a very high drive dog, is I soaked my leash in Tabasco sauce, which worked right
Oh.
away. He did it one time, and that was it. He never chewed on a leash again. I don't have to worry about correcting him. I don't have to worry about making it personal. And I
Yeah.
certainly don't have to worry about my dog chewing through a leash and getting hit by a car in the street when he chews through his leash. So he didn't like it, but he only didn't like it one time.
Yeah. And you know what? That's another conversation entirely. Natural consequences. You did
Mhm.
something, and something you didn't like happened as a result. Listen, Robert, you've been so kind, so generous with your time. I
Yeah,
really appreciate it. Thank you for doing the yes, no, maybe never. The idea of that game is to
yeah.
help put some guardrails on what's
Hmm.
appropriate for correction and what's not. And I know that there are moments where you go, hey, man, it's really hard for you to push me in a corner where I've got to answer it this distinctly because dog training is such a dance.
Hmm.
But the moments where you hesitate are the moments where the audience hears and goes, well, maybe I really shouldn't just go gung ho with a bonk, or maybe I shouldn't just go
Right.
gung ho with a water pistol. Maybe not
Mhm.
every dog should be submissive rolled. Maybe that's a little dangerous for me, a 138-pound woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it all looks good
So,
on film. That's what I'm saying. This
yeah.
is the danger with social media. Is like, we're seeing things done to dogs. And listen, I'll close on this thing. I really feel sorry for young boys and girls who feel like the social media is real because these poor girls are
Mm,
going out and getting plastic surgery and doing makeup and looking like porn stars, when they should just be enjoying their youth. And
yeah.
people are out there trying to do things with their dogs aren't capable of doing, or all this stuff. You just need to have a reality. And I've kind of semi-retired on dog training. I just want to enjoy my dog. I just
Yeah.
really love my dogs. My I've got Goofy sitting over there. He's 14 and a half. Shmuley sitting in front of me. He's, 6 months. That's all I really need. I don't care about social media. People follow me or they don't follow me. Who cares? Um, I do it because I love dogs. That's the reason I got into dog training. It's the reason I got into pushing free videos on social media. And
Yeah.
it's why I'll continue to do what I do until it ends.
Well, we've all benefited from your passion. I know I can speak for everybody when I say that your knowledge makes us all a bit better. Really appreciate you stopping by on
Thanks.
the podcast today. Yeah, appreciate you so much, man. One last thing. Is there another book
Yeah.
coming?
I'm working on, I've got one book I was going to write. It'll probably be my last book. And it'll
You
be
got to
like the story
complete
of
the
my life.
trilogy, brother. I've got one
I
and
know,
two. I
right?
need the trilogy.
Yeah. The third one would really be like my journey, like my journey of life and how dogs influence my life and the
I dig
things, some
that.
great stories. So yeah, it's I'm working on it. My friend Steve Stoops and I were kind of having a competition because he was writing a book about his life, and we would send chapters back and forth at night to each other and kind of like motivate each other. But yeah, I still have one plan for one more book. Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, when it's out, I'll have you sign a copy for me.
I love it. I will do that.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for stopping by. See you around.
My pleasure. Take care, Chris. Later.
Bye.